Hello and welcome back, it's Shrike here with another D&D video, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make city maps and region maps in the tool known as Inkarnate. In the first half of this video we're going to go through how to use the tool Inkarnate, so if you've never used it before it should give you a bit of an insight into how it works and how best to use it, and then the second half is where we talk specifically about how to make region and city maps that look pretty good. So if you already know how Inkarnate works, feel free to skip to the second half of the video. I'll make sure there's timestamps down in the description so you can go along the timeline and find that place. But feel free to watch the first part anyway, because you might learn something that you didn't already know about Inkarnate. And if you're looking to make battle maps in Inkarnate, I've already made a video about that I'll make sure is up in the top corner here. There'll be a little link that you can click, and I'll make sure there's a link in the description so you can go through and see that if you want to make battle maps in the tool as well. But without further ado, let's jump into Inkarnate. So when you first click to create a new map in Inkarnate, this is what you'll see. And if you haven't been in Inkarnate for a little while, you'll notice there's a few new options. They've recently added watercolor cities, watercolor battle maps, and they've also updated the fantasy battle maps. And before I actually select one and we get into it, I just wanted to make it clear that I have got the paid version of Inkarnate, but you can make regional and city maps with the free version. You'll just have less assets and less brushes and stuff like that. So if you're looking to make a city map, you can click on the watercolor cities if you want this style. I'll just show you a few of them. They're pretty good actually, and I have used this tool quite a lot recently. So you can make some really nice looking watercolor maps. Or the other option is there's a Fantasy Regional HD here and also a Fantasy Regional Classic. If I show you some of the examples that they give you here, you can see that this is a small region of a little place called the Prince's North by the looks of it. There's also places like this you can make, which is a bit more isolated buildings and stuff like that rather than big regions. There's pretty much a whole continent, I think that is, or maybe it's just a small island. Here's another region. So this is the type of thing that you can make with this tool. So there's quite a lot of varied options here. And then if I also go down and show you the Fantasy Regional Classic as well, it's more map-like, I guess is the word you would use, but they're pretty good as well. So for the sake of this video, I'm going to go into the Fantasy Regional HD, and then once you've clicked whichever style you want, you can just click choose style, and it asks you for the resolution and also the ratio. I'm just going to leave it as what it puts you on default. So this is the tool, and first of all what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through all of the different buttons and what they do, and then we're going to actually start making a map and you'll see how the tool works. So if we start on the left hand side, this here is just a select tool. So once you have assets on the map, you can use this tool to just select them, move them around, resize them and stuff like that. The second one down is called the mask tool, and this is where you add land or you take it away. So you just do that and then it gives you a bit of a land mass, and then you can also subtract it as well if you wanted to take it away. And it's as simple as that. There are some different options of shapes as well. So if you wanted it to be a perfect circle, you could do that. Or you can have this sort of rough edges one. And then there's also for isometric maps, you can have it this sort of squared version as well. And with pretty much anything in this tool, along the top bar, there will be the option to change the size. So you can change the size of the brush. And talking of brushes, next down is the brush tool, and this is where you can open a catalogue of different textures and you can choose which one that you like, and then you can put that onto the landmass that you've just put in. And you'll see on the left that even though we selected the regional fantasy HD maps, you can tick the other ones to show those assets as well. So I could tick fantasy world and fantasy classic and seal them if just in case there's something in them that I would quite like to use as well. But we'll get rid of them for the time being. So if I just choose this grassland, you simply can just brush over and add it to your map. And as I said, along the top there's a size, and you can use the W and S keys as well to change the size, and then you can just brush it over, and you'll see that around the edge there is a softness, and if I only tap it, it puts a little bit on there, whereas if I hold it down and wiggle it, it puts a lot on there. This is up here. There's this softness that you can change, and if I did it all the way down to 0, it's very harsh lines at the edges, like you can see. You can also change the opacity as well, so if you wanted it slightly transparent, you could do that, and you can see what that looks like on the right there. On quite a lot of the parts of this tool, you will also see these options, the shape, rectangle, circle, and polygon. And if I just show you what they do, you can draw a shape. So let's draw a shape like that. And in whichever texture you have selected here, it will input that into the shape. So if we change that to water, and then you just click apply, and then it changes that bit into water. And you can also make it do a border around this, so you can select here and it does just around the outside. So if I press apply, it makes a little pull around the edge as well, and that can be quite handy if you're trying to do specific things with your map. Next down is the stamp tool. So this is probably the most important part. This is where all of the assets are stored in this catalog that you can just click here, and then you can just scroll through and see what you have to put on your map. You can also use the search function at the top, which is quite handy. So if you only wanted to see hills, you can just put in hill and then it will show you the brown and the green hills. And you'll notice that in the bottom right of all of these assets, they have a number, and then you can click show and you'll see that there are actually quite a few different versions, but in the same style of that stamp. So if I selected this green mountain here, it would bring it into the map, and then you'll see on the left are all the different options from that style. And if you have this box ticked up here, the random stamps box, then it will give you a random one. So if I click a few different places, it's giving me different mountains and slightly changing the size as well. And then in the same way as what we've already gone through, you can change the size of the mountains as well, and the opacity. You can also rotate them, and you can change the density. And what it means by the density is on quite a lot of the stamps, you can just click and hold and then move your mouse around and it will place multiple of them. If you change the density, so if I put it lower, then they'll be a bit more spread out. Or if I make it a lot higher, then they'll be really close together. This won't be on every stamp though, so for example you can see this house here, you can't click and drag and put multiple houses in, you have to just click and then place them individually. You'll also see on the left here that there is a blend mode, so when you have an asset like this crater here selected, you can change the blend mode into different versions, and it just makes it blend into the background a bit more. So screen is quite a good one for watery type maps. And there's quite a lot of them that you can just sort of click through and see which one fits best. But you see that if I remove that and just go back to normal, it doesn't really fit into the map. But then if you put something like none of them, overlay, then it's a bit nicer. And then if it's not quite right, you can go into the advanced settings and you can change the hue, saturation, brightness and contrast as well to just make it just right. So if you wanted it a bit darker, maybe a bit less saturated, let's take the contrast down as well, then it just fits into the map a little bit better. And you'll also see that there is the shadow here. So this asset actually has a bit of a shadow by default, but you can also change it to object, which just gives it a little bit of a shadow around the whole object, or you can change it to layer, and then that gives it the more traditional sort of shadow that you would expect. And then there is also the flip function if you just wanted it a different way round. The next tool is the text tool, which is pretty self-explanatory. You can place it and then you can just type whatever you wanted it to be called. So Torlay Town, let's put that there. You can choose the font and change it to whatever you want it to be, and they have quite a few fantasy style fonts. You can bold it, you can change the size, change the color of the fill, all the stuff that you would sort of expect to be able to do with text. You can add a shadow if you want a shadow, you can add or take away an outline. Basically what you would expect to be able to do with text you can do here as well. And just to let you know, in these stamps, if you scroll right the way to the bottom, there are placards that you can place as well. So you can do some quite cool stuff to make your map stand out a little bit more. And then the tool under that is the pathing tool. So you can choose your style up here and then you just click and drag, and it adds little lines onto your map. So you can make them solid, you can make them dotted, or you can make them dash. Oh, there you go. And once again, it's all pretty self-explanatory. You can change the thickness however you like, the opacity. You can change the color, add some shadow and blend it in as well. So I really like to do this if you're making a map that has waterways that have trade routes. It adds a little bit more definition to the map. There is a notes function on here as well, but I have never really used them because I generally use this tool to export the map and put it into another tool. But you can click here on the note tool and then you just click a place and you can put a little note on the map. You can also put a grid on the map by clicking here and then putting show grid at the top, and it can be isometric, square or hex. So if you would like to do that, you can do that here, and then you can also change stuff like the opacity and the color and stuff like that. And then the last one out of this section is the filter option. So you can add a filter on top of it just to change all of the colors of the map. And then just below all of those tools, there is a pan and zoom, which you can just click, and then you can use it to move the map about, and you can also click to zoom in or zoom out, but you can also use the mouse wheel for that. And then at the very bottom left, there is the save option. There is no automatic saves, so get in the habit of clicking that every now and then. So quickly, on the right hand side there are also layers, so you can have different layers on the map. So you can have like the background, which would be the grass, and then you can have buildings on top of that, and then you could have something on top of the building, and you can control that all on the right hand side here as well. There are also layer shadows which you can put in there. These are all of the objects that will be listed once you've put them on the map. This one currently has none. And then there is also a world generator, so you can just generate a world, choose how much ocean it has, and then it will generate. That's not really helpful when you're making city and region maps, but it's good to know that it's there. And then finally, to do with the tool, if you want to export it, once you've made it, there is an export button down in the bottom right here, or you can go up to the 3 lines in the top left here and export as image here as well. So now we know how Inkarnate works, let's actually make a little map, and you can see the process I go through, and I'll give you some tips along the way to make sure that yours stand out as well. So the first tip is that you could, if you wanted to add water to the map, you could choose the texture of water, get the right size, and then you could draw it on that way. So I could draw a river here. Well, that's a really bad river actually, because it's not got the smoothness on, so let's put the smoothness back on. And you could draw something like that as a river, but the option that I prefer is to go back to the mask option, change it to subtract, and then take out, and then it makes a line like that that has a bit of shadow either side. And then you go to the brush tool and you select something which looks like dirt, so it looks a bit more brown than the grassiness that we have around. And then make it nice and small and just follow it around the edge of the river just to give it a bit of a dirty bank kind of feel. And it doesn't have to be perfectly smooth, because you know rivers in the real world aren't perfectly smooth as well, so you can just do it quite roughly like that, and then that just gives it a little bit more depth to the river. Okay, so now I'm going to put some trees onto the map. So we're going to go into our stamp collection and we're going to select a tree that we like the look of. So I'm going to choose some of these trees. And what I'll do first is change the density. Quite low is how I want it. And then I'm just going to click and drag it around the area. You can individually click this, but I prefer to do it this way. And then we're just going to click through. And there you go. Now there's a load of trees nice and easily onto the map. And now we're going to put a building onto the side of the river. So you come and have a look at what building you like the look of. We're just going to select this one, a watermill, makes sense. We'll put it over here. And then we're going to just move it a bit closer. And then I want to make sure that there is a casted shadow just to give a little bit more depth to it. And in fact, I've decided that I want to add the same shadows onto all of these trees. So I've gone to the select tool here, and then you can just click and drag and it'll select all of it. And then you can change all the shadows at once to be layer. And then there's just a bit more harsh shadows on them. And one tip about using buildings in this tool is quite a lot of people say they wanted to actually have it here. They'll rotate it to be in line with the river, but that really puts it off. It just doesn't look right if you do that. So once you place a building, you do not want to rotate it at all. You can flip it if you want it the other way, but do not rotate it. So there you go, we've added the building. Now let's add a path that can go somewhere else. So we'll go to the brush, go to the texture again. Let's find some sort of path texture. So let's use a muddy one. So let's use this dirt one that we used before. Make sure the softness is up, or it looks a bit weird. Make sure the size is correct. And then we're just gonna draw a little path away from the house. And then along the path we want some flowers. So we go back into the stamps and we find some bushes and some flowers and bits like that. So let's use... let's put some lavender bushes there. I'm going to make it smaller, so I'm just using the S key here to shrink it down quite a lot. And then let's put them outside the house, in fact. Some different lavender plants. And then if you wanted a little bit of verticality to the map, you can go into the stamps and there are these cliff edges here that you can actually add in. And if you position it correctly, you can make it look like there is a drop, just like that. So you can make it look like you'd have to do it up along the top as well. But you get the point. You can make it look as though there is a drop from a higher part down to a lower part. And another thing in the stamps is mist, so you can add some mist to the map as well. And if I just chuck some on here, it doesn't quite look right because it's behind these trees but in front of these trees, and this is where you can change the layout. So I can put it behind all the trees or in front of all the trees, however I wanted to do it. And you can just add a bit of mist to your map if it's a misty kind of environment. And let's just say you've completed the map and you want to put a little title on it. You would go to something like the standard tile, place that there, go to text, and let's change that to that one. And then let's call it the watermill, very original. And then you just make sure that it is the right size. So let's change that color as well. Let's change it to black. And then I'm just going to select them both, change it to the size I want it to be. And there you go, we have a very simple watery watermill map. So there you go, hopefully that has helped you understand how to use Inkarnate and how to make regional style maps with it. As I said before, if you want to make battle maps with it, I've already made a video about that which will be down in the description. And if you want to know how to make world maps, let me know in the comment and I can make a video about that in the future. If you did find this video useful, please do give it a like. It helps me to grow this channel, and make sure to subscribe if you want to see more content like this. I upload quite a lot of tutorial style videos like this one, as well as other videos which have all kinds of information around Dungeons and Dragons. But until next time, happy gaming.